Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. Well, welcome everybody to today's episode. We have Lindsey here, and she's going to tell you all about herself because I think it's best to have the person actually share what they want to share. So I'll turn it over to you, Lindsey.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you today. And I want to say I did a little homework. So let's see how this goes. I did a PPU. Is that
Ooh,
correct? Okay, so here we
yeah,
go. I
you
didn't
did.
I
Okay,
didn't
so
rehearse it.
So full disclosure, now for better or worse, I'm going to tell everybody what that is, just for those
Do
people
it.
that might not know what it is.
Yes.
PPU is a way to introduce yourself, which people have found to be really useful because it's structured, it's focused, and it keeps us from rambling, which
Yes.
I personally am a recovering rambler myself, so I need any structure I can get. So it stands for say something personal, professional, and unique about yourself. So that's the setup.
Okay, let's see how it goes. So I'm Lindsey and I am from the Midwest, born and bred. I now live where Karen grew up. So I live just outside of Minneapolis and I prefer winter over summer any day of the week. Good
What?
place for me here. Yes, yes. Professionally, I do a lot of things that I really truly love. I'm a speaker, a trainer, a business and life coach, but I really focus on helping fitness and wellness professionals start their business and do it from a place of their unique strengths and gifts and what they want out of their business. So instead of compromising their life, we integrate that first and then build a business. And something unique about me is I've done over 100 obstacle course races.
Oh my gosh.
Did I pass the PPU test?
Yes. With flying colors, I might add.
Oh, good.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Well, and first of all, thank you for jumping in like that because what a wonderful way to model how to introduce yourself in general. So thank you very much, Lindsey. Well, I know we have a lot of synergy between what we do. And I really latched on to the internal piece that you've talk about that you do with your clients. So I wonder if we could start there.
I'd love
How
to.
does that work for you, your clients, and what do you believe around all that good stuff?
So I have been a personal trainer for 15 years. I also have a background in counseling and psychotherapy. I thought I would merge into being a therapist, and that just didn't feel right for me. So I've really been searching, honestly, for the way to integrate those things really well. It didn't feel authentic to me to only be doing personal training or to only be doing coaching. And as the universe always does come for you, I started to get former colleagues or new clients who are like, could you do business coaching for me
Ooh.
around their fitness and wellness business? And as it always goes, which is great for your topic of building confidence, I was like, I don't do that. I don't do business coaching. And then I thought, oh my God, no, that's the perfect blend of what I actually can do, right? Like bringing in this coaching element, this really deep coaching, almost therapy element to business coaching in an industry of which I have 15 years experience, which if you make it over a year in personal training, you've got worlds of experience. Most people don't make it over a year. So I started doing some of that coaching. And honestly, the only thing that seemed to matter was the personal work that we did. It's not that you don't need to learn how to do an email list. It's not that you don't need to price your offers. You need to be able to take money and all these different things, right? But I talked about with clients, what do you want your business to look like? How many hours a week do you want to work? How does it fit in with your family or your life? What are your strengths? What do you like to do? All these questions that it seems like people hadn't actually thought of. And in the most recent round of my course, my mentorship course, I asked them, what was your favorite unit? Because we had all things, right? We talked about offers and networking and sales and many different topics. Unanimously, it was all about creating a business from their unique perspective and their life, which was the whole first month of the program. And I was actually genuinely surprised because, like, I know it's important, but to see it reflected back was really cool.
Oh, that is really cool. Oh my gosh. And unanimously too.
Yeah.
It makes me think about when I first started out in coaching, I created this questionnaire, but the truth is it's still the same questionnaire all these years. And what was striking to me is the question that I would ask, well, not the question that I asked, but the answers that I got, which very
Right.
much seem in line with what you're talking about, which was, what is the biggest fear that you have about your life? And almost unanimously, it was making it the fear of not making a difference.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, isn't it? How we can have systems in place. Systems aren't necessarily hard, even though
Right.
sometimes for a lot of us it feels hard, like tech feels hard to a lot of us, including me.
Right.
But when you really think about it, it's that internal piece of perhaps self-doubt or, oh, could I actually have a life like that? And I love that that's
Mhm.
what you ask people because
Can I
I
give a quick example?
yes, no need to ask permission
Well,
here, Lindsay.
I was doing a session with one of my clients and we were talking about this. And now when you hear personal trainer, what do you think of? You, Karen, what do you think of?
Well, I think of hardcore, really buff, uh,
Mhm.
somebody who's telling me what to do, the reps and all of that.
Yep.
And I've had a lot of loving, kind ones, but I also do I think that generally speaking, it's the go after it. You got this. 30 seconds. You can do anything for 30 seconds. So
Yes. So someone who's like there with you, pushing you, coaching you and is really, you know, a certain way. So I'm working with this client and turns out she's like, I don't want to work with people in person. I don't want to work with people one on one. And I don't really want to work with them in real time at all. And I was like, well, okay. So if you had followed this model of what's traditionally out there, and this is actually where she was really getting hung up, right? Is that she thought that as a personal trainer, the only way she could make money was to train people one on one in real time, whether it's virtually or in person, or have group classes or something like this. And she's like, I don't want to do any of those things.
wow.
So
That's
had we not taken that step back and really looked at her strengths and the one key thing she's like I'm a really deep introvert and I have 3 kids and I don't want to be tied to a schedule. Okay, so now we can build something that's actually based on you and your life versus what you think you were supposed to do.
yeah.
Way different scenario.
Gosh, that is so great. So great. Well, let's talk about you,
Okay.
if I may. Tell us about a time, because most of my listeners, of course, are interested in confidence in all different
Yeah.
capacities, but we're, of course, mostly connected through mistakes we've made or vulnerabilities that other people can relate to. So
Yeah.
tell us about a time when you weren't as confident and perhaps when you didn't speak up, wish that you had, or just simply a time where you remember not feeling confident.
Mhm. It's such a mix for me because I've had this outward confidence for a long time. I can remember even being in 3rd grade and I went to a Catholic grade school, but I was Lutheran and you weren't supposed to take communion.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like at school, I wasn't supposed to take communion. And I thought, well, I'm doing it anyway because God loves me.
Yeah.
That's what you just said. So I have always had this confidence to do what makes sense to me. And if you're a Gretchen Rubin fan, I'm a questioner in her 4
Mhm.
tendencies, which made my life very understandable after I realized that. So I've always had these moments of very outward confidence. I speak well. I've always liked public speaking. I have just confidently gone in these steps my whole life. But internally, I think we all have these struggles. And to answer that specific question, I stayed at my job for 9 years. And looking back, I wish I would have listened to myself and had the confidence to leave earlier, even if it was for another job or something else before I actually did end up quitting because there were so many signs it wasn't right. But I didn't listen to that inside confidence that I had. I let it sort of be overrun by, well, I should stay, or I don't know
Mm,
what else I would do. So I'll just stay here. And that's probably the biggest one for me if
mm,
I would go back.
mhm. And isn't that the truth? Like people just delaying things or not trusting themselves or maybe just not believing. And I mean, let's face it, in the moment, it feels easier for a lot of us.
Yes.
It's easier to stay in
Yes.
the habits. I mean, you know this as a personal trainer too and
Yes.
therapist. I mean, man, you have such a varied background
Mhm.
and how hard it is for us to shift that, I talk about how compelling reason a lot that
Yeah,
we don't have a compelling enough reason to change. Why would we? And so staying in
exactly.
touch with that. Yeah. You mentioned a reference of somebody very quickly a little bit ago, and I would love for you to pull that out again and tell us. You said if you're not familiar with her, I didn't.
Oh, sure.
Can you speak to that so that we
Yeah.
can glean your wisdom from her?
Yeah, so look up Gretchen Rubin. She wrote the book about habits and happiness, I think was one of her books, but then she came out with a sort of personality typing quiz. And it's different because instead of just talking about how you operate in the world personality wise, it was all about how you uphold expectations. And I
Oh,
was like, oh, this makes sense. So there's a rebel, a questioner, an obliger, and rebel, questioner, obliger. There's one other one I can't remember.
okay.
But for
Okay.
me, being a questioner, I have no problem doing the things I need to do and staying accountable if it makes sense to me. Now, someone who is, oh, what's the one I can't remember? But you're either externally motivated. So, like people who need a personal trainer, you know that about yourself, that in order to execute on this habit, I need external accountability. And that's one of the tendencies to just know that about yourself. So you can build these habits in your life that you want based on how you stay accountable. Now, if you're a rebel, you don't stay accountable to yourself or anyone else. So that is a crux. Oh, I cannot remember that fourth one. But so you're either
Okay.
externally motivated, internally motivated when it makes sense,
Okay.
neither one, or both. And I've had a client who is both, which
Okay.
is fascinating. Like if they decide they're doing something, they do it. And if you expect them to do something, they do it, which
Okay.
often leads to burnout, as
Interesting.
you would expect.
Yeah, yeah. Oh boy. That makes me think of boundaries and how hard it is to set them and say no. Anything you want to share about that? Thoughts, advice, or how you've done in
Boundaries.
your journey about, yeah, saying no or simply taking care of yourself and yeah.
I absolutely love that you asked that question when we're having an overall podcast about confidence, because I think you create so much confidence by creating and sticking to these boundaries. Because here's one example from my own life. I feel really good in my life when I meal prep my food on Sundays. It's very simple to me. I just feel better. The food's in there. I don't have to think about it for the week. It's done. Now, if I'm traveling or something is just amiss in the week and I don't get that done, I mean, it really throws my week off, just from a habit standpoint, because I value health. I want these things to be pretty clear cut. So my family, if I go out of town for the holidays, let's say to visit my family, they know I'm going to leave by 2 o'clock on a Sunday because I go home and I meal prep, which seems so funny,
I love
but
it.
that's a pretty good boundary that I have because it sets up so many things during my week. And
Mhm.
I felt really not ashamed, but I felt like that was such a silly thing to have a boundary around or to say, like, no, I have to leave. Like, I'm not going to stay here till 7 and get to my house at 11. Like, that doesn't work for me. So practicing just saying your reasons why you have that boundary. And also, you're not required to say why, right? You don't have to. You
Exactly. No is a
don't
complete sentence.
have to. No is a very complete sentence. And the other cool thing about boundaries that I have experienced is when you place them, other people learn from that. So I had a client who gave me a testimonial. We did business and life coaching. And she said, we didn't directly work on this, but the biggest thing I learned from you was that how to set boundaries.
Mm,
And that was never a thing that we actually like coached around.
wow.
But it was the way that I had boundaries in our business relationship because we're also friends, right? This happens with a lot of people who have clients. You become
Yes.
friends. So I had business boundaries, I had timeline boundaries, I had boundaries on what I would or wouldn't disclose. And she's like, that was so valuable to just watch you model those.
That's so cool.
Right?
Oh my gosh. Yes, that is fantastic. And isn't that the truth? I think about how I've been thinking about this recently. I have a client where we both end up talking past the session time, and then it makes me, I start getting kind of frustrated, like, ah, but I'm the one that has to say something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing, but then you know how it is. Well, for me, I'm less of a planner, so for me, it's more in the moment. Like, oh, if I'm having a good time, I want to keep going, and then I have to realize, okay, there's other things in my day that are now affected by that decision.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, what else? Tell us about a failure, if you wouldn't mind sharing. Or that sounds pretty dramatic. Maybe a big
Does.
mistake that you made in your past and that we could learn from, or learn from how you learned about that.
Man, that is a good one. Mostly because I'm going to give that sort of cliche answer is I don't really think things are failures. Like I actually cannot think of something that I hold on to as a failure. I
Mm-hmm.
have, I'm sure, many things that I wish I had done better
Yeah.
or differently, but I think that mindset of just being like, well, that didn't work, or that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the way I thought it would go. And honestly, if I think of a failure, I think this as a business person, which you might understand. So many things I think about in my head. I should be doing this by now, or after
Mm-hmm.
6 years, you should have had this done. Or
Mm-hmm.
it's more the shoulds in my life that I think hang
Sure.
me up than failures.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of rewriting for me.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that? Thinking about other people. And I will say one other thing, because I do love what my friend's mom always used to say, I should have had a shoulda box for all the
Right?
shouldas that I had.
Isn't that the truth? Instead of a swear jar, just make a shoulda jar and we'd all be very wealthy, very wealthy, or broke, depending on if you're the one putting it in or taking the money, right?
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah, every time, and I do this with clients, and this is the funniest of things, right? To be working with clients and to stop them in their tracks on something, and then to think to yourself, well, I do that all the time, and
Yes.
it's such a
Yeah.
reflection back, and they're just, I'm going to give another example. So I have some clients recently who it's like after a year of the pandemic, they're now deciding that it's a great time to talk about their failure to maintain their body weight.
Hmm.
And I finally said to one client the other day, I said, I will not entertain you talking like that about yourself anymore, because I said, A, you don't get to go back in time. There is no point in beating yourself up about what you could have or should have done, whatever that might have looked like. And also, we've all just survived a year. No one expected us to survive. We didn't know what was going to happen. None of us have done this before. And the fact that you feel the need to pick on your body just
Mhm.
has got to stop. Now, if you want to talk about ways to move forward, you want to talk about the choices you can make today, yes. But it's really been fascinating that within the last 2 weeks, kind of as things are moving more positively, right? We're moving towards emerging from this. Only women, men have not said these things to me, but women are like, oh, I've gained so much weight in the last year. And oh, shouldn't have done this or that. And there's no point, right? There is no point. So when I think about failures too and the shoulds, that's really what gets most of us, is living in this place where we're thinking about what we could have or should have done instead of thinking, well, what could I do today? And
Yeah.
I do that too.
Mhm. And it is so helpful, isn't it, to have somebody as a witness like you in their lives to go, hold on. And
Mhm.
just to make us aware, because I feel like I say that too. And sometimes I just say it, probably like a lot of people listening too. We just say it or we think it and we don't have anybody to say something back to us.
Mhm.
So that's such a good accountability piece.
Just
Just
rewind that part of the podcast and you can just repeat it to yourself.
yes. Well said. Well said.
Mhm.
What about let's shift to some advice, Lindsay.
Yeah.
What advice, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten And what would you like to impart to anyone listening here that might be struggling a little bit with confidence?
I don't quite know the answer of the best advice, but I was thinking a lot about how I want to tie in confidence to sort of my experience that might be helpful to your audience. And my background obviously is in movement. So I am partial to the fact that we as humans very much need to move our bodies.
Hmm.
And I don't mean that you need to go run obstacle course races like I do. That happens to be what I love to do. But I do believe that so much is accomplished when you simply move your body, whether
Mm,
that's a walk, a little bit of yoga, some simple stretching, but moving your body. And the point in my life where my confidence really did spike or take a higher trajectory
mhm.
was when I had started obstacle course racing and I was training for my first 24-hour event. That was the year I quit my job. That was
Wow.
the year I started my business. That was the year I completed that first event. And again, you don't have to do anything crazy, don't have to set world records on things, don't have to do insane feats. But when you can trust your body, your confidence builds, and this kind of ties
Mhm.
nicely back to what we just said about quit, bashing on your body. It's what you get and it's what you have. But when you can move your body, you get creative ideas, you get confidence, it comes full circle when you dedicate some of your days to moving your body in a way or committing to, I don't like the word challenges because of all the crappy challenges that are out there. Do this for 30 days, blah, blah, blah. But, and
The
there is
anti-challenge.
oh, there's a lot of value in saying to yourself, I'm going to walk for 15 minutes every day
Mm,
and then doing it, right? It teaches you to keep a promise to yourself. It teaches you, there's just so much for me, confidence wise, tied to moving my body, being grateful for my body, letting it carry me to do new things I didn't know it was going to do. I had a client train for that really long hiking trail, I think in Italy or somewhere you hike, whatever
mm,
it's called, right?
yeah, Muchu Picchu. Yeah, I'm gonna totally I'm gonna
Right,
botch it.
whatever it was.
It is.
And she's a two-time breast cancer survivor, long hated her body, felt it was not worth anything, body image issues for years. And that accomplishment turned the corner. And
Wow.
again, you don't have to do that. And the beauty is actually in the training for it, right? The beauty for me has always been in training for these events and the dedication behind the scenes. But I could go on and on about that. But I think confidence is often tied to your body.
That is so true. I feel like there's so many different ways we could take that.
You pick, Karen, you pick.
I
Which
know,
spin-off
but
do we want?
well, I think we need to wrap, but, if there is anything else you wanna add to that, please do. Anything that you wanna maybe parting words?
Mm, so many parting words,
I know, because 'cause I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, there's so much now that I want
right?
to."
I'm like self-trust, all these things. If we tie it back to your overall theme of confidence, I think there's two big things we talked about today, which is learning how to set real boundaries, which can tie into moving your body, having the time to do that, having the dedicated space or the accountability to do that, and to just trust that you know your body and quit bashing it. That's a side conversation. But tuning into those two things to really build some self confidence, right? We know it has to come
Yeah.
from the inside.
Well, and that's such a good reminder of also, I would adjust that only to say making time,
Yeah.
because if we don't, other people will fill in the
Or we will with other things,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, we will.
Yes, that's right. We have no problem. I think about that sometimes when I think,
Mhm.
gosh, I really wanted to do that thing. And what else have I done? Oh, well, you've managed somehow to watch an hour and a half of TV every night.
Exactly.
Well, it's been great chatting with you, Lindsay. Such a
Thank you so much.
pleasure. My home state sister. So tell us where we can reach you.
The best place is to go to my website, lindseyheiserman.com. You can go there. The content is being revamped, but there's also great links to my podcast. So you can listen to that, contact me through there, or head over to Instagram at Lindsey Heiserman Coaching.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining today, Lindsey.
Thank
Always
you
great
so
to
much.
connect with you. And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.